Hey there, it's that Sunday school girl. Thank you so much for taking a quick peek at the lesson with me for this Sunday, June the 28th. Hope that your week was a good one. Mine was A-okay, and I am looking forward to another great weekend. It's family reunion season, and my family is no different. So this evening, I get to head east to the city of Hope, Arkansas. And usually when I say Hope, Arkansas, people say the home of Bill Clinton. Yeah, well, before there was a Bill Clinton, there was the Stewart, Williams, and Wyatt families. And so we will be together, enjoying each other, celebrating our incredible family heritage. And I always call it my opportunity to unleash my inner country diva. So, of course, I'll be in red dirt. I may pick up a fishing pole, although I do not bait my own hooks. Who knows? There'll be a piece of watermelon involved, but how great, again, just to be with family. I hope that you and yours have something great planned too. And yes, I hope that that does somewhere include Sunday school. When I return on Sunday night, I am on the last flight from Dallas, Texas to the city of Tampa, Florida for the 2015 AIM Convention of the Church of God in Christ. You probably know that I am a Kojic girl. AIM is an acronym for Auxiliaries in Ministry, and so 5 of our departments, being the youth, music, missions, evangelism, and of course Sunday school departments, will be together for 5 days in Tampa. This convention is a time of training, it's a time of fellowship, and of course a time of spirited worship. And so I saw this morning that our chairman, Superintendent Linwood Dillard, has already traveled to Tampa. We are praying now for him and most certainly the great success of the convention. Now, of course, I wouldn't be the Sunday school girl if I didn't make a shameless plug for Sunday school, right? So Bishop Alton Gatlin, our president, along with Mother Cleolia Penix, our international field representative, and our entire leadership team have worked together to pull together an amazing time of training and worship. I am telling you, if you are a Sunday school worker in any capacity, if you are a superintendent, a teacher, an administrative worker, a student, you do not want to let this time pass and you not come by and take advantage of this great training. There are, I believe, 13 tracks of training that are designed to impact and equip Sunday school workers. So whether you have specific interest in men's ministry, women's ministry, specific strategies and ministry for children, there's even a curriculum for disabilities ministry. If you are a Bible scholar and like to dig into your word, there's a track for Bible scholars. I promise you there is something for everyone. You don't want to miss it. I am asking you to pass through. We'll be over in the Marriott. Come by, check it out, take advantage of that time. And of course, I'd love to see you. Say hello if you pass through there. I'm normally hiding out at the finance table, but I'm not too hard to spot. I would love just to say hello. And wherever I see you in the convention, I'm looking forward to seeing the saints from everywhere. So please, please, please come and take advantage of the time of training in Sunday school. You will not be disappointed. Let's take a quick look at the lesson for this week. No matter who your publisher, the lesson is entitled, God Will Never Forget. The Bible basis is Amos chapter 8, verses 1 through 6, and picks up again at 9 and 10. Just read 1 through 10. You'll be safe. The Bible truth says, Amos says that God will no longer overlook their misdeeds and will destroy them for all time. The memory verse is verse 2, and the lesson aim is that we will explore unjust practices and their consequences during Amos's time. Reflect on how the church practices injustice and seems to be oblivious. Encourage the church to address injustices practiced within our community of faith. So this is our 4th week in our new quarter, our 4th week in the book of Amos. And the unit title is God's Prophets Demand Justice. So we've been talking about justice and injustice and how we use our space, place, and voice to address it. And we've been following this prophet Amos, who used his very small country boy voice to speak against injustices and to be a voice for God. Again, since we've talked about Amos, now this will be our 4th week, you can kind of review some of your other notes. But again, Amos was ministering way outside of his context. He was this shepherder who also, he was a fruit picker. So again, he's this boy from the south who comes to this very cosmopolitan city in the north to speak against injustices that are going on there. The interesting thing that I find about Amos is that he was not trying to be relevant to the world. So he didn't look like people expected him to look. Again, as a sheep herder, he probably smelled like sheep, who knows? But he did not look like the world. And he wasn't trying to be relevant to people, but he was trying to be relevant to God. And so I am very motivated by that. Even if you're not relevant to the people around you necessarily, you can still be relevant to God. And so you look at this, again, sheep herder, this fruit picker who goes, he's not a professional. He's not a professional preacher by trade. He's not polished. He doesn't have clever lines. He's just a farmer who one day felt the call of God to go and preach. And he goes to the north, and he again is addressing the injustices, the bad behavior of the north. And it was interesting because if you look at what has taken place geographically, you would think that Israel would know that God just doesn't put up with things for too long. As a matter of fact, I have a question for you. Have you ever just run out of patience with something? I mean, you have employed all of the strategies that you know how to employ. You've held your tongue. You've not responded. And it's just pushed you to the point of you just can't take it. I was thinking about the character Popeye when I was studying this lesson. There would come to times of frustration where he would make an announcement. He would say, I have had all that I could stand and I cannot stand anymore. And that really is what we see this week with God as he sends his word through the prophet, that God has had all that he can stand and he cannot stand anymore. And again, I don't know about you, but when I saw other people get in trouble growing up, and even now, if I see someone suffering consequences, I'm good. I don't need the lesson or the t-shirt just to say, okay, I get the lesson now. I am good by observing others. And so you would think that Israel would be able to do that if they looked around. Even in last week's lesson, the Lord told them to look around. You've seen judgment and punishment executed on the cities around you. Do you think you're any different? But even after seeing everybody else in the room get a whipping, Israel still does not get it. And so God sends word that it is now time for their own judgment, and he is going to deal with them because they have not gotten it right. Amos is a prophet who did not minister for a very long time. Scholars will debate whether it was a number of weeks, but it certainly was no longer than a year. But again, the people remained unwilling to hear what this prophet had to say. When I look at this lesson, I realize that it is very easy to be like Israel. It's very easy in our own minds to do our own things, to be on rituals of worship, or think that because we're in church, or, you know, I go every Sunday, or I'm a tithe payer, that somehow justifies bad behavior. And it's easy to look at other people when they go through things and say, oh, well, they deserve that, or this and the other, but we don't look at what we ourselves are doing, and we can't begin to point out issues in our own lives. That really is the issue that Israel is struggling with. And so God begins to point out those areas for them. In this lesson, I think our purpose is really to understand the warnings and acknowledge the dangers of being oblivious to warnings when they come. What happens when you just don't pay attention? I remember as a child, sometimes if you'd get in trouble, you know, you'd maybe get a verbal warning. The next time, you know, you may get another verbal warning, but the final time mom was going to say, listen, I told you, and she'll reminded you of when I told you. And so this time you are going to have to deal with whatever that consequence is. In this lesson, as a matter of fact, if you've read through Amos, there were 5 visions given. This is actually the 4th of the 5 visions for this week's lesson. And again, Amos has progressed from warnings to now making statements of fact about what God was actually going to do. In this lesson, God asks, what do you see? He asked Amos, what do you see? Amos was like, I see a basket of fruit. I'm a man who picks figs. I know fruit when I see fruit. So God used something that was very familiar to him to make his point. And in seeing this basket of fruit, it was not just a basket of fruit, but it was a ripe basket of fruit. And it was going to ripen, and not just ripen, but rot very quickly. If you think about something rotting, it carries a smell. I remember several years ago, I had been home for maybe a holiday. I think it may have been Thanksgiving. And I came home, and when I walked in the house, there was the most treacherous smell that I have ever smelled in my life. And my sister was with me, and as Toucan Sam said, we followed our noses, and that nose took us to the garage. And in the garage was a freezer where I had been to the butcher recently and had good meat and frozen vegetables out there. But apparently the breaker tripped, and it had tripped several days prior to my coming home. And so when I came back, that smell of something rotten in the garage was almost enough to make you nauseous. And so here the Lord shows this basket of fruit and says that it will rot. And you know that rotting things not only smell, but they attract flies and that kind of thing. So really disgusting scene. But he was attempting to show the disconnect between him and his people. And again, if you look at the nation of Israel, the time has run out for them, and the Lord is no longer pleased with them. And so God has postponed his final judgment, and he's not going to do that anymore. The nation, as we learned last week, has been participating in times of idol worship. God is not pleased with that. They have these regular worship services, but he says that even now your singing will become wailing. And not only this wailing, but there are going to be dead bodies dropping from everywhere. You won't even have time to bury these dead bodies. And again, God's issue with Israel was that they had no value at all for life. They took advantage of the poor. They just took no thought for really what God cared about. They were guilty of sexual sin, entertaining themselves, drunkenness, but they did not have time to be concerned with the things of God. And we too, I think the lesson there is that we have to be careful that we don't become too consumed, that we don't take time for the things of God. Even if you look at, even from last week's lesson where you talk about this entertainment being so important to them. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but when we allow those things to become distractions to the point that we don't make the time necessary for God. So our emails, our iPads, our computers, whatever it is that's taking up our time, that can become problematic. I was listening this morning to Good Morning America, and now there's even a neck diagnosis for people who spend too much time on devices that are entertaining us. And statistics say that in our lifetime, we'll spend an average of 10 years doing something entertainment like on devices. And when you think about that, how does that compare to the time that we will spend digging into and taking advantage of the things of God? He goes on to say, basically, all they care about is money. All you care about is work, and you want to work 7 days a week. I'm going to pass judgment such that the sun goes down at noon. Let's see how you do with that. Let's see how you work picking out your crops at noon when it's dark. And so again, God has this time of judgment. He goes on to say that I'll make you wear sackcloth and I will make you bald. And again, you have to remember that this judgment is coming down to a group of ballers. They have everything. The stock market is booming. It's a great time. They've got great houses and beds made out of ivory. And here comes this judgment where God says, I'm going to take it all away from you, and I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable position. That's what sackcloth is. It was something very uncomfortable. It was like bad underwear, really. So very uncomfortable. And I will make you bald. Oh God, no, not my hair. No, Lord, not my hair. But in the sense of not just pattern baldness, but when someone would shave their head as an expression of mourning because the time would be so bad and so treacherous. So the question is, what happens when God's patience runs out? And I don't want to be guilty of causing his patience to run out. I did some reflection questions in a journal that I have. Those questions are, has God ever had to get your attention? And what did he do to do it? How does God's running out of patience compare to anyone else's? What is true compassion? How do you show compassion for others? And then again, as we're looking at injustice and studying this community of injustice, what is being proactively done? What are you doing proactively to address injustice that you see? Lastly, and I forgot this note, even looking at their business ethics, we look now and there are so many people who call themselves Christian businesses, etc. But what does that mean? What does your integrity line up? If you are a business owner or even a worker in your workplace, if you say I'm a Christian, that is more than having just a fish on your car or a What Would Jesus Do t-shirt. But what does that say every day about the ethics that you employ, about the attitude that you bring into the workplace? And so I think all those things are important. Those were things that jumped out at me this week for the lesson. On tomorrow night, Superintendent Michael Payton and the Illinois First Jurisdiction will be on the Sunday school line at 9 o'clock Central. The dial-in number is 605-475-3235. The access code is 170045. The instructor tomorrow night is the incomparable Dr. Faye Butler from New York. You do not want to miss that. Don't forget that Dr. Danette Verche also has posted her lesson review from this week, which is done on Wednesday nights. You can check it out on her page, and you can listen to any of these replays while you're driving. Get it in your spirit and be ready for class. Let's be great students together. Again, if you're traveling this week to Tampa, I hope to see you there. Have a super weekend no matter what you do. See you next week. Bye.